20 years to get to that TBX. We all know we have an east-west problem. Tampa doesn't have a loop. Other cities have a loop.
We really need a loop.
We have a bay.
Yeah, but we can still build a loop.
Can we?
Yeah, it would just be over the bay.
That's what 275 is.
But they'd have to think about a lot of other things, right? Like right now, I know there's a, for example, look at cruise lines. Only some of the smaller ships can come to Tampa. The big mega ships can't because they have to tend with the Skyway, which is really tall, but apparently not tall enough.
Not tall enough for a 9-story building.
Yeah, that's what it is. You have floating cities on the water, literally, right? More than 9 stories, some of them. Mm-hmm. So, all right, this is Tampa Home Talk. It's been fun talking a little bit about Florida and some of the not so much least affordable cities. I don't know that that's fun, but we enjoyed talking about it, to say the least. And our operator number is 813-377-2775.
Welcome home. This is Tampa Home Talk. That came very suddenly at 813-377-2775. That's 813-377-2775.
I think our missing airtime is not missing this week, so that's good.
That's good. And I think our missing Sarah is on the phone.
Yes, she is.
Good morning.
She doesn't want to come see us anymore. She
said she had like 3 closings this morning. Is that accurate?
Yeah, just they're just stacked up like dominoes, and I'm just trying to get to them as quickly as possible, so it's a smooth Friday.
People love those Friday closings, man.
Well,
Never understand it. Totally pick a different day of the week.
Move into your home over the weekend. It's the best time to do it.
It's nice to get your keys before the weekend. Absolutely, yes.
So we'd love to talk about some of the changes coming up to the market. There's a lot of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac stuff going on, including some program changes that we have not seen yet, and I would love to talk about it because I know it's very ripe for the market.
So there's so basically what's been discovered amongst Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are a lot of borrowers who are purchasing a second home or an investment property are actually buying a home for a parent. And so there are provisions that have been made, and we can accommodate these borrowers with what's called a family opportunity loan. Basically, in a nutshell, it means that if you're buying a home for mom or dad, it can be underwritten, priced as a primary residence, even if it's not going to be the borrower's primary residence.
Sarah, let me pause you for just a moment. I love that they've actually done this because when you think about it, in the lending world, like when you guys take an application, it's very vanilla. When you guys take an app, you're like, okay, is this going to be an owner-occupy? Is it going to be a second home? Or is it going to be an investment property? So there's always like this weird little mix, right? Because when you think about a parent, especially one that's actually buying it, a kid or whatever that's buying it for a parent, there's a very good likelihood that them or someone they know may be living with the parent to take care of them in the future. So it's the occupancy has always been, I think, very gray. So I'm glad that they've come up with this family opportunity loan because it's definitely been a gap in the market.
Yeah, so that's where it kind of falls through the cracks. You have a client that's legitimately buying a home for a family member. They have no intention to rent it out to a tenant, and it doesn't meet the criteria for a second home because you do have to meet criteria for a home to be construed as a second home property.
What are some examples of that so the person knows what you're talking about?
So to meet the criteria for a second home, it has to be logical that it would be your second home. Your intention has to be to occupy it for a portion of the year. Obviously, it can't be leased out to someone for 12 months consecutive. And it has to be a reasonable second home. For example, it can't be 2 blocks over from where you currently live. Second home transactions are typically where someone purchases a home in a recreational area or on the water or near family members that live out of town.
It has to make sense, right? What would be a vacation home?
Correct. And so this kind of fills that gap. Especially when the borrower wants to live near their older family member. So you can actually do a loan now with the Family Opportunity Program, purchasing a home near your current primary home, and it's considered a primary residence. So you're not going in with second home pricing or investment pricing. You're going in with the best possible scenario for the interest rate, which is a primary home price. In terms of the rate, and you can actually add your family member to the deed. So when you're able to do that, even though they're not a party to the loan, you'll actually pick up the homestead exemption, which is great with regards to the real estate taxes.
How does that work in terms of qualifying for it? They're just treating it as a regular, like you have to calculate it in their debt ratios?
Absolutely. So unlike an investment property where perhaps you've got a tenant and you're using lease income to qualify, you definitely do have to budget for your current primary home as well as the primary residence that you're buying for your parent. As long as you're budgeting for both payments, there's no issue.
Okay. So what other changes have come? Because it's been interesting. Since COVID, there's been quite a few little changes. This is one of the things. How long ago did this come out?
So we were just notified of this a few weeks ago, and it's awesome. You and I are working on a transaction that falls into this category right now. It's only available via Fannie and Freddie. It is not available on a government loan, which means this is not an option for an FHA, VA, or USDA borrower. It's really very simple, though. There's no extra hoops to jump through. We simply get a letter of explanation from the borrower that they're purchasing a primary residence for their parent. And what Fannie and Freddie say is if the parent is unable to work or doesn't have sufficient income to qualify for a mortgage, the child is considered the owner-occupant.
That's cool. That's really good. And I love that they can actually get the homestead exemption, because that's been one thing that's been missing, the fact that they can add them to the deed.
Absolutely.
Do they care about how...
I know of where we can do that. Yep.
Do they care about how title is held?
Sure. So, I mean, and just like, in a government loan where maybe you're a co-signer for your child to get a loan, and you already own your own home and you're already getting your own homestead exemption, title will just record, with respect to the deed, the names in the proper order so that that homestead exemption will be granted. So I'm going to say the parent would go on the deed first, and in that order, so that homestead will be given.
What other things are you seeing? What other changes?
So that's really the most amazing change that we've seen in the last couple of weeks. We are seeing some of the COVID overlay is starting to be relaxed a little bit. Pricing's getting a little bit better on those lower scores where it's been very challenging, in the last several months.
What about, have there been some changes or updates to, as it relates to the use of qualifying with retirement or government or annuity or pension income?
So, not really. I mean, we certainly do qualify with fixed income. We can gross up non-taxable income to qualify. We have asset depletion where maybe if you've got a lot of assets, a lot in your retirement account, but you don't have enough monthly income, Freddie Mac has some provisions where we can actually perform a calculation and give you credit for monthly income based on an asset, not a real monthly income, to help you qualify.
The other thing I thought was pretty fascinating is they actually changed what's called the 1003, right, or the loan application. Didn't they redesign that or change that?
They did. We have a new what's called IRLA, and they have taken what was a 4 or 5 page loan application and turned it into more like a 9 page loan application. It's a lot more in depth. It asks a lot of additional questions.
I got to tell you, that other loan application has not changed for years. Like when I was a lender, I used that since the early 90s. It literally has not changed that long. So what kind of things have been added and changed on that?
So they want to know, specifically, it's a specific question on the application. Are you applying for any other credit right now? Is there anything that you know that could convert to a lien on the property you're trying to buy?
Wow.
Are you co-signing for anyone else right now? If you're not married, is there any other person that could potentially have an interest in this property, like a domestic partner? Just very in-depth with, so that the borrower is as transparent as possible about their intention to occupy, and whether they're securing new credit. Those are a lot of the big changes.
So all those questions on the end have gotten more in-depth. They've added some more, huh?
Yeah, I mean, we always check. I mean, we always obviously look at a credit report. If we see inquiries, we always ask the borrower and make them address if the inquiry has resulted in a new credit account, things of that nature. But it's actually incorporated into the application right now where the borrower has to acknowledge that at the time they sign.
Yeah, so that's interesting. What else did they pack into those additional pages? Because we went from, you said, 4 to 9?
Yeah, I mean, I can run through examples for you. We definitely had to take a lot of training on it.
Wow. That's pretty crazy to think that a veteran loan officer like you has to get retrained on a new loan application.
Well, it's just because there are a lot of boxes. There's a lot. They've added a lot of detail to it. Where employment is concerned, there are specific questions that didn't used to exist on the application. If you're self-employed, we just check a box. You're self-employed. Now we state if you're self-employed. We state the percentage of your ownership. It just takes all of the same information and breaks it down into a lot more detail.
Wow, it's cool that they've made such amazing changes, but I mean, shoot, when was that last one? When did that come into play? Do you know how old that was?
So
I want to say it's from the
So
80s.
did you. I've done this more than 20 years. I've always used the same loan application. This
I think that
effective back in March.
Don't the applications usually have like a version number with a year in the bottom?
Usually I thought they did, but I want to say that app had to be from the 80s. Literally, pretty much the same app for years and years and years.
That predates cell phones.
Well, so what about rates, real quick, Sarah, because we're almost out of time. How are they doing?
So rates are still low. They're still forecast to be low. They have inched up. I mean, there's been a lot of, obviously with the CARES Act, stimulus infused, which was like $1.3 trillion, and minimum wage going up.
And we're still seeing stuff in the high twos. We're still seeing that. All right, this is Tampa Home Talk. Thanks, Sarah. We'll be back right after this break.
Welcome home. Welcome home. We're back at the Tampa Home Talk. I believe we have our
Mr. Miles Zuber.
Zuber on the line.
Miles Zuber. He's with Super Financial. He's like the student loan relief king. That's what he is.
Very timely to have him on this segment.
So, Miles, welcome back. So glad to have you. We'd love to talk a little bit more about what you do. We've had you on before. And one of the things I love is the biggest question that I'm sure you get and that we hear is student loan forgiveness real? Like, is that a real thing?
Thank you so much, Katrina, for having me. And it's absolutely real. However, there are some covenants that have to be established, but it's run by the United States Education Department, and there are several levels of student loan forgiveness. There is the Title V, which is for teachers, and they get a forgiven for $25,000, which, if you're an educator, is probably a drop in the bucket, simply because you have to have the most education for the least amount of money. But the most popular one, and the one that I direct my clients to, is called the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. And that is if you work for the city, state, or federal government at any level, you qualify for loan forgiveness after you make 120 payments, which is 10 years. And then the other part of that is if you don't work for the city, state, or federal government, or you volunteer at a non-for-profit 501c3, you qualify also. So student loan forgiveness is absolutely real.
But they have to pay, you said 120 payments?
They do have to pay for 120 payments. Now, here's the thing. We try to we know that this isn't going to be a paying less proposition getting out of student debt. What we try to do is make it a less painful endeavor. So what happens is we take a look at your student loans. We do a loan analysis. Most of the time, people are paying the top tier in repayments. What we do is we find the lowest repayment option for them to pay. So let's say you're paying $400 a month, and we find that you could really be paying $120 a month. So we get you into the lowest paying option, and then you're paying at $120 for 10 years. And if you at $120 for 10 years, we're getting north of $15,000. Let's say you have $50,000, $60,000.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you is how much student loan debt, are we talking about, and what would 400 be, and what does 120 look like?
Let's say, typically, my clients have debt anywhere from over $30,000 to $400,000. Now, the programs that we would put you in are called income-based repayment programs. Back in the day, in the old days, you borrowed money, you paid back the money that you owed. Past administration has changed it to you pay back what you can afford to pay back so that everybody's not going in default. So what we will do is put you into the loan forgiveness program based on your income. And let's say if you make $30,000 or less, your monthly payments will be zero. And those every month you pay zero will count towards your loan forgiveness. And then they have a scale going upward where if you make $35,000, you're going to be paying somewhere around maybe $100. So there is a sliding scale, and you have to do it every year based on your income tax.
So how can a payment of $0 actually count as one of the payments?
Well, what happens is this. They have to keep their books straight. So just because it's $0 doesn't mean it doesn't qualify as a payment. If your payment has been calculated at $0 based on your income, that is your payment. So therefore, each month of $0 counts toward that 120.
So Miles, how do you help somebody that, say they are a doctor, right? They probably have some of the highest student loan debt of anyone graduating, right? Mm-hmm. A physician would. What type of student loan debt are you seeing a physician graduate with? And give some suggestions for repayment on how to get a handle on that student loan debt and what the best way is to get some student loan forgiveness if that's an option.
Great question. So for us, we want to do two things. We try to do two things. We try to get you into the lowest monthly payment and get you into the loan forgiveness program. However, doctors, simply because the nature of their profession, they make money, and there's nothing wrong with making money. So 9 times out of 10, when we see a doctor, we can't really move the needle too much on their monthly payments. However, we can change the time horizon on how long they make those payments. So therefore, instead of 20 years, 25 years, it's down to 10 years.
Oh, wow. How do you do that?
We put them into the loan forgiveness program.
Okay. So how much student loan debt are you seeing a doctor graduate with, and what does that look like? If you're reducing them from 25 years to 10 years, can you give me an idea what some of those numbers look like?
Sure. Typically, they'll be paying roughly right around $1,200 a month. Right? They'll be paying roughly around $1,200 a month on $200,000 to $300,000. So if they are paying,
and what income are you looking at? So they have $200,000 to $300,000 in debt. They're paying $1,200 a month in student loan repayment. What income are they making?
$100,000 plus.
Okay.
And how much is their malpractice insurance, which I heard is brutal on doctors?
Definitely.
Well, that doesn't affect their student loans at all. That would
unfortunately
come into the equation of their student loans.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, $200,000 to $300,000 in debt, I mean, that's a house right there, and $1,200 a month, that's a mortgage payment right there.
Pretty much.
Right. So once again, like I said, we cannot probably lower their monthly payment, but what we can do is lower the time horizon on how long they pay. I'm an old mortgage broker, right? I am an old mortgage broker. I worked on Wall Street for over 40 years in different capacities with hedge funds and everything. This is the most predatory financial product I've ever seen in my whole life.
Miles,
at least in mortgages.
I have a question for you. Going back to the doctor thing. So there's no point you could start this earlier? Because I thought usually, I mean, as you go along, you accumulate, you get, like I've seen on credit reports where there's so many different loans, right? All over the place, right. Like for different semesters and different classes and that sort of stuff. So what about like when they're an intern, right, for the first couple years? When does all that start actually counting? Because they're not making any money. So can some of that student loan debt actually go away while they're not making any money? How does that work?
That is the strategy that we are employing right now. We want them in the loan forgiveness program where they're not making any money. So therefore, that each month that they're not making any money counts toward their loan forgiveness. So we really want to catch them in their early career. Actually, what we really want to do is get them while they're in their undergrad.
When they're still in school, yeah.
That's right, because we can do a waiver on their student debt. When you're in school, you get what you call a student in-school waiver. We want to waive that. We want to be able to start paying on our student debt because at that point, you're not making any money. So we can get you into an income-based program because you're not making any money and put you into loan forgiveness. So while you're in school, your loans are actually on the clock being forgiven.
That was my thinking. While you're in school, while you're not making any money, why can't you start that clock? And it sounds like you are.
that is the direction that we are pushing people in right now. If you know people who are in college and get them into, we can work with them to get them into the loan forgiveness program while they're in school, while they're in their undergrad, and therefore the clock is ticking on loan forgiveness. So therefore they're actually working on their repayment on their loans while they're in school.
So let's talk about the interest and how fast that actually grows on student loan debt. And is it true that the minimum payment oftentimes is not enough to meet the interest?
The answer is yes. However, here's the great thing. Once we put you into the loan forgiveness program, we don't care about interest anymore, simply because the government's going to pick up the tab. So therefore, this here is actually the best program if you're going to do post graduate work, simply because that's when it eventually goes up, your student debt, but you're already in the program and you are on the clock, so therefore your debt might go up, but the government's going to pay for it.
Is there student loan forgiveness on every type of student loan debt, or just certain types?
There is. If you work for the city, state, or federal government, you can be forgiven. Or if you volunteer at a 501c3, you can get forgiven. And here's the interesting thing, Katrina. Years ago, my partners and I, we were sitting around and we had a bunch of clients who could not qualify for loan forgiveness simply because they were not in the city, state, or federal worker pool. And what we did was we actually started our own 501c3, and we have a Chinese wall up between our for-profit business and our non-for-profit business. And in our non-for-profit business, people who don't qualify, now they volunteer with our non-for-profit, and now we can qualify them for loan forgiveness.
I love that. What type of volunteer work did they do?
Oh, this is really good. Let's say, perfect, it was designed for like doctors and everything, because we know there are time pressures and they don't have a lot. What the volunteer work that they do is they go through their social media platform, they go through their Rolodex, they talk about what we do, and we can legally at that point say, yep, they're doing volunteer work for us, and we can qualify.
So this goes back to my theory that I had all along. If you remember, Leah, we were talking about this, and we were talking about how high doctors' student loan debt is when they get out, and some other professions too, but doctors are a great example. And how I feel like there should, so this, my thought that I had would work perfectly in this theory, and then you can comment on it, Miles. But doctors, when they come out of college with all that student loan debt, they should work for not even like an entry level. It could be, say, a nonprofit 501c3 that treats people without insurance, treats people without money, treats people without whatever. And so they basically volunteer to work that. Yes, they're making less, right? Maybe they make a tiny fraction of what they would make as a physician, but they work, with the people that need them the most, and it happens to be a 501c3. What are your thoughts on that? Like, how long would it take to wipe out some of that student loan debt if we had a world that worked that way?
Well, I mean, that's not a wrong strategy. It's like, if you just come out, yes, you're an intern and you're working really a lot of hours. However, getting attached to a 501c3 and doing volunteer work is pennies on the dollar, simply because it qualifies you
Got it.
for total loan forgiveness. So therefore, that's why we created our 501c3, because we had people who couldn't attach to 501c3.
And is it 10 years of volunteer? Is that what it is? 10 years?
It's 10 years, and you have to recertify every 2 years.
Got it.
So
Okay.
what happens is the 501c3 recertifies you, say, yep, they're volunteering.
Miles, we are out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back.
Are you looking for...
Welcome home. This is Tampa Home Talk. Thanks for rejoining us and sticking around after the break. Always love to have Miles. He's such a wealth of information and a really good resource if you got some student loan debt. So
if you can erase $200,000 of debt, that's the best type of caller for our listeners.
If you'd like to connect with him, just call or text us at our off-air number, which is 813-377-2775.
That's 813-377-2775.
Again, that's our off-air number, 813-377-2775. $175. Leo, while I have you all to myself and there's no guest, I would love to talk a little bit about some of the stuff you're seeing on inspections right now in this market, because I know what we're seeing on the listing side, literally people are waiving home inspections to get offers accepted. They're waiving appraisal contingencies. That's a big one. Like literally, you can't even get an offer accepted without waiving an appraisal contingency.
Well, they still want their inspection. They're just not using their inspection to make a decision on if they're buying the home or not. They're using the inspection to figure out what they're getting.
So, yeah, and that's the thing that we're seeing is many people are like, look, I'll take the home no matter what. I just want to know what I'm getting into. And the sellers, you got to look at it from their perspective. They're trying to pick the highest and best offer, which also includes, some properties that, it may need some work. So we talked about this earlier in hour one, how it's a good time to put houses on the market that need work, that need work, that you don't want to repair.
Yeah, this is the great time to do that, because I hear it time and time again. I put my house on the market and I had 30 offers within 12 hours. That's typically what I hear.
Are your inspections longer now than they were in the past? Have you noticed that as a trend? Are they taking longer to?
As an engineering firm that practices home inspection, we always get the more complicated homes. We get the older homes. We get the possible sinkhole homes. We get the mid-century homes. We're not getting many of my home's 5 to 10 years old inspections. We're just not getting those. And we've never really gotten those. We've always gotten the more difficult ones just because of our background. They want to hire us to find these more difficult homes. So I would say the quality of the inspections we're getting is about the same. It's just that we're not getting any repeat buyers. We're not getting someone that gets a report that says a house is falling down and they say, well, this is a money pit. I don't want this house. They're not doing that. They're moving on to the next house.
Because it's hard enough to get one house secured, right? Yeah. So they're just like, okay, what am I dealing with, and what's my order of attack as it relates to things that are important?
Yeah, so I would say our reports aren't getting any longer, and the inspections aren't taking any longer to do, because we're getting the same types of homes. That hasn't changed.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because we definitely have not seen a lot of the repeat clients, if you will, right? Not intentionally, but like when they have more options to pick from and this house has a long list of defects, they may say, oh yeah, I'm just going to, this is my insurance policy to make sure I got a good home. I'm going to leave this one on the table and go find another one. People aren't doing that. So how much of your business, say in a normal market, whatever that is, right, these days, but in a normal market before, how many people what percentage of your business were like repeat customers, even if it was 2 home inspections?
It wasn't a lot. It was a lot less than you'd think, because, by the time you've gotten your home inspection, you paid for your WDO, and you paid for an appraisal, and you paid for these other tests, and you paid all these other fees. You're in your home, you're in this for like $3,000. Not to us, but you're in it just to all these other companies, and all this money you've shelled out for $3,000, plus you've got your other money tied up in escrow. So
usually you guys are the first. So you have your inspection or your escrow money, that's first.
Yes.
Inspection is next. We actually save WDO until after you guys inspect. Sometimes, especially if it's not a government loan, we say wait and see what the inspector says, and if he finds wings or poop, then let's order a WDO, right?
But as Sarah said earlier, the home purchase is an emotional experience, so and it's an emotional decision for a lot of people, so they just want to get all these inspections done, and they want to get all these things moving as fast as possible, because they heard like, we got to close, and to do that you need all this laundry list done, so that's why they end up spending that. So I would say on average, 2 years ago, we probably had 2 or 3, we'll call them repeat clients. So not a lot.
Okay.
Not a lot by any means.
We're seeing 0 now. Right?
We're seeing 0 now. But we're seeing them on other ends of things. We do more than just home inspection. So they close on the house. They want to remodel. They need permit plans. We're seeing that. They want a baby proof. We're seeing that. So we're seeing stuff after closing, which was what we'd rather see. I don't like buyer for one house, turns it down, hires us again, turns it down, hires us again. I don't really like that.
I don't think the agents
don't like it. No one likes it.
Because are you serious about buying, right? Because all houses are going to have stuff.
Right. And also, not only are you serious about buying, but by the time you've read 1 or 2 of our reports, please start paying attention before you put a contract in, before you ask us to come out the 3rd time. I often say to the wholesalers, I'll only do 5 inspections for you for the base qualifying. And then at the end of 5, you better know how to do it yourself. And that's what I tell the wholesalers and the investors out there in the real estate investment groups.
Well, and that's the difference, right? Like you have someone that's a seasoned professional, whether that comes to investing or people that quite frankly, like myself, that have just been in a million home inspections, right? So literally I can walk through a property, pretty much tell what that's going to need. Now, granted, I'm not getting on the roof or climbing in the attic. That's 2 things I'm not doing. But I can see a lot of stuff from the ground on the roof.
And you can see a lot of stuff from these MLS photos. I mean,
yes.
I can, like Kim was saying last hour, there's 40, 50 photos on an MLS posting. I can basically inspect a house and know what I'm walking into based on the MLS photos.
Yeah, same with the valuation. I can literally value a property without even being inside of it.
I mean, we're not going to find everything from MLS photos, and there are other nuances that we want to see, but I get a general idea of what I'm walking into. Has the home been updated in the last 15, 20 years? Is the roof new? Is it a hoarder house? Are there structural defects? I can pull all of that just from the MLS posting.
So let's talk about, like, if you were to buy an investment property and you were to make a quick run through, what are some of the things you're looking at real quick? Like, obviously, let's pretend you're not an inspector or an engineer. What are some of the things you're looking at quickly before you decide if you're even going to hire an inspector?
Well, if I'm an investor, I want to know the most expensive things first. I want to know the foundation, I want to know the roof, and I want to know the AC. If I can look at those 3 things at a glance from ground level and see if they have major issues with them, that's the big 3. I mean, the electrical stuff is usually minor, the plumbing stuff's usually minor, cosmetic stuff like the window screens the big 3 are foundation, which can be $60,000 and up, roof, which can be $15,000 and up, and AC, which is $10,000 and up.
When you say foundation, is that like wood frame?
Or block.
I mean,
we had one yesterday that the block wall was falling off. We had visible cracks, horizontal visible cracks, bulging walls. That's block.
All right. Well, this is Tampa Home Talk, and if you've got any defects in your home you think should be checked out, great connection with Beryl. I have to say that we'll tell you what's going on. 813-377-2775. You can call or text to connect with myself or anyone else on the air. 813-377-2775. And remember, love where you live or we're going to fix it. Welcome home.
Love.